Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining us again on another late show. It's really so nice to be able to come to you live on Revelation TV. It's the finest, as I keep hearing from some of the presenters. Okay, anyway, tonight is a very special night. It's always a special night because we've always got something quite exciting to share with you. But Nikki is going to tell you all about it.
Yes, so tonight we are going to be talking to a YouTube investigator, which we will introduce to you shortly. But before we do, we have a couple of videos that we just want to kind of lay the foundation of what we are talking about tonight, because we are talking about online scamming, whether that's through the internet or through mobile phones. And we do want to encourage you to write in with your emails. If you've been experienced in a scam, if you've been scammed, or you feel like you may have been scammed and you don't know what to do about it, or you just want some advice on how we can stay safe when we are online, our live guests will be answering all your questions. So do start getting them in early, live@revelationtv.com, or text the number on your screen. But just to give you a bit of an outline and to give you some information about online scamming, Kyle has put together this news report to tell us more.
Statistics say that criminals in the UK stole over £750 million through fraud, a big portion of which came from online scams. This was an increase of over 30% compared to the previous year, and it doesn't look to be slowing down. Younger people are also increasingly becoming victims. In the last 12 months, action fraud has had more reports from people aged 20 to 29 and 30 to 39 than any other age groups. Over the last few years, criminals have had to adapt online. As our lives have moved even further online, so too have scams. 80% of cases reported to action fraud are now cyber-enabled, which means they are using digital devices or the internet. This is why young people are falling victim more than the older generation due to more activity online. Think about our increasing reliance on buying stuff off the internet. This goes a long way to explaining why online shopping and auction scams were the most reported types of scam this year, with some influencers even selling scam Bibles detailing different methods on how to scam online step by step. With so much social pressure online to become wealthy and successful, seeing celebrities and flashy rich people traveling and showing off cars, women, and extravagant items, people are being told and brainwashed into thinking they need to acquire and live these lifestyles, and if they don't, they are unsuccessful, leaving a hunger for fast money and a culture of instant gratification. Reports make clear that social media is a tool for scammers in investment scams, particularly those involving fake cryptocurrency investments, an area that has seen a massive surge in reports. More than half of people who reported losses to investment scams started on social media. Scammers use social media platforms to promote bogus investment opportunities and even to connect with people directly as supposed friends to encourage them to invest. People send money, often cryptocurrency, on promises of huge returns but end up empty-handed. As well as bank scams, callers posing as well-known banks and asking for personal information and tricking their victims for their bank details over the phone, acquiring credit card info and other sensitive information, allowing them to take large sums of money. Together, investment scams, romance scams, and online shopping fraud accounted for over 70% of reported losses to social media scams. But there are many other frauds on social media too, and new ones popping up all the time. The internet and social media is a great tool and has changed the world as we know it. We must be wise with what we do and engage in online, especially anything to do with investments and online dating. Don't be too quick to believe anything too good to be true, like fast money or too eager online romantic interests. Use your God-given wisdom to be discerning online. Despite all these scams going on in the world, we should not be afraid or have any fear of being scammed. We use our wisdom and information like this to be aware of what is going on in the world today, to be able to avoid these situations. Give any fear to God and remain calm amongst the storms, just like Jesus. Have you been scammed online? How can we fight back and stop these scammers? What are some tips you can give to avoid falling victim to scams? Take care and God bless.
Much to Kyle for reporting on that for us. Just gives us some facts and figures of what is happening online, and it can be quite worrying to see them statistics, but hopefully this program tonight will be very insightful and enlightening to be able to help you practically to be able to see telltale signs of a scam. But before we go to our guest, we have a video that's going to introduce him any better than I could. This comes from his very own YouTube channel called Tech Support Scams, and it all tells you about our guest Jim Browning. Take a look at this.
The reason why I'm calling is, I don't know if you're aware, but the whole thing is a scam. I can see that the scammers still have access to your computer. This is the way their scam works.
He fights back against robocall scams and tracks frauds across the world.
Can you turn your computer off as soon as you possibly can, please?
He's not a detective, he's not a cybersecurity professional, but he is a tech-savvy engineer who's been turning the tables on robocallers and scammers.
I don't know how much you bought, but just stop right now.
$2,000. And then he took my $17,000 out of my account.
I'm going to try and find out exactly who they are.
He's known on YouTube as Jim Browning. There he posts videos of real-time tech support scams, refund scams, IRS scams, and many other techniques used to defraud people out of their money. On his YouTube channel, he turns the tables on scammers and exposes their methods, and has gained a worldwide following of more than 3 million subscribers. Yet for all the acclaim, the man is totally unknown. His name is not Jim Browning. Here's where he works, but we can't tell you where he is or show you his face, for obvious reasons. He's helped lead authorities to fraud boiler rooms, resulting in the takedown of major operations.
Let me just introduce you to the man himself, Jim Browning. Thank you very much, Jim, for joining us tonight.
Yeah. Hello, and thank you for letting me on your program. And I'm sorry about the disguise here, but hopefully I'll describe why I'm dressed like this as well.
Yes, do, because you look like Batman, and we've not had him on yet.
I would love to say Batman, but not quite. I really am wearing this disguise, or sort of a disguise, because I want to protect myself, because I disrupt multi-million-dollar scams, and I'd rather my own details, as your introduction said. My name isn't even Jim Browning, even though it's my YouTube channel name. I literally want to keep my identity as much of a secret as I can. But yeah, it might sound a little bit like Batman, I guess.
Yes, but well, we appreciate it and we understand, and I'm sure our viewers will understand, because they're going to gain some knowledge and information tonight, which will certainly help them. We do have a lot of older viewers who watch Revelation TV, and they're probably the most vulnerable part of our societies these days to scams such as those seeking to take away their pension funds or annuities, which they have to place in safe hands. That's one of the ones which the governments have got actually adverts out right now on other channels to actually make them aware of these scammers. I also know of 2 people that have been scammed recently, Jim, and they have lost a lot of money. Fortunately, the banks got it back for them, but that isn't always the case. So how can you help us tonight? And probably we could start with one question. What is a YouTube scam beta?
Yes, well, I do the thing that you're not really supposed to do, which is take on those scammers. And not only do I just answer their phone calls, but I literally go back to their computer. So if it's a computer-based scam, I will take control of a scammer's computer and I will actually reverse the scam. I will go back to them, find out who they are, and I will literally turn the tables on the scammer. So as your introduction said, I've been able to get several call centers closed down as a result, and I've been able to get people refunded for any losses that they've had. It's rare that that happens, but I have been able to do that.
Yes. Well, just to remind our viewers how I came across you was that, probably about a week or 2 ago, I was up in the middle of the night, as I usually am, and I was listening to radio and talk radios and things like that. And your name came up, and they explained what you were doing, and I thought it was fascinating. So I got onto your YouTube channel, and I learned a lot. But what I like about what you have done, and I thought it was quite unique, but you have honestly said tonight that there are other people out there doing what you're doing, but you are doing something which is turning the tables on these scammers. I mean, we saw a little bit of footage just a second ago where you were able to clock into their, their CCTV of their their premises and gain footage like we're looking at right now of those who are going out for a smoke, or you get onto their computers. And you tell us a little bit about how you came across being able to do that.
Well, but the whole idea with originally when I started out, it was nothing more than just recording the type of scam that more or less everybody in the UK will get. You will get phone calls probably on a daily basis from someone pretending to be your bank or Amazon or whatever. And when you look at some of the footage that I've been able to capture, it was actually of CCTV within one of the scam call centers. And that's because I had computer access to the scammer. So the way these scams typically work is the scammer wants to steal your money. And in order to do that, he typically wants access to your computer. So I deliberately let those scammers onto my computer, but it's set up in a way that when they connect to me, I can reverse that connection. So literally I can go back to their computer. And whenever I do that, I can then see things like their CCTV if their offices happen to have that. So not all of them do, but occasionally I'm able to come across ones where you can then see who the scammers are, find out where they are, and really unravel their scam. And that's really what the channel is about.
Okay, just these questions are coming just as I think about them. I'm not looking at the sheet at the moment. But, you know, let's say, for example, what sort of money are these scammers making on an average day? And there's quite a lot of people in this particular call center of scammers.
Yeah. So, you can get very small scam call centers. There might be only 5 or 10 people there. But you can also get huge ones. And I've seen a scam call center employ 300 plus people.
Gosh.
And the very largest of those, I've seen the spreadsheets of the amount of money that they can make. And if you can imagine what they're really trying to do, or some of them will try to do, is empty someone's bank account. Mm-hmm. And I did see one scam organization, the one that employed 300 people, and their target was to make £1.5 million per month. So well over £10 million per year. That's not dollars, that's not rupees, that's over £10 million per year. And that's for the largest ones. Some of the smaller ones, maybe a few £1,000, a few $1,000 per month, but enough that they will clear the bank accounts of certain victims. And if you can imagine, that all depends on how much is in those bank accounts. So small to large, people can really end up losing their entire life savings as a result of some of those scams.
Right. Okay, just one more question, and then we're going to go to some emails that are already coming in as well. With that sort of amount of money being turned over by just one call centre, 10 million per year, what would an average scammer per head get per annum out of that?
Well, the people who operate the phones themselves, they tend to be the lowest paid people. So the fixed salary, if you like, may only be maybe £100, £200 a month, something small. But they will be given what are called incentives or bonuses. So they will get a fraction of the money that they steal, typically 5 to 10% for the people who are actually operating the scam itself.
Wow.
Most of the money, though, it goes to the people at the very top of the organization. Mm-hmm. So the people who run the scam call center, they are the people who are mega rich out of all of this. Typically, I've a small amount of sympathy for the people who actually operate the phone calls, because they certainly do not make as much as the people at the very top.
Yeah. Now these are, I believe, are mainly in India. So £200 a month is still quite a lot for someone in that position.
It is. That's a fairly... It sounds low. In the UK, that would be low wages, obviously. But within India, yes, that's an awful lot more. But if you join a scam call centre as opposed to a regular call centre job, you will make 5 or 10 times more, even without those bonuses, as you would in a legitimate job. So there's certainly incentives there, and it means that an awful lot of young people particularly are attracted to those scam call centres. Mm.
Now, I remember seeing on one of your videos that one of the bosses was, and we're talking India, if you're thinking about somebody getting £200 a month, he was paying $6,000 a month rent for one of your top apartments in India, correct?
Yes, the guy's name, I think you're highlighting a guy called Amit Chowan, and he was the boss of the call centre. Yes, he lived in absolute luxury. £6,000 a month. I mean, if you even think about it in terms of rent in the UK, that would be excessive, but it's absolutely unheard of in Delhi where he was. And, you know, he had an apartment which overlooked a golf course and an Olympic-sized swimming pool. He was living in the absolute lap of luxury.
Right.
And it was all funded by those scams.
Right, sadly. Nikki, you got some emails coming in already?
Yes, lots of emails coming in. We've got Alwyn from South Wales says, we all have to be careful online. Thank God we have Jim on the case. May God bless him.
Oh,
amen.
there you go. They're already loving
that.
you. Don't worry about the dress, you know, or the things that you're wearing.
Yeah, I hope I don't look like a scammer myself here. But, yeah.
Well, you might be. You
Hopefully
might be
you'll
on our
appreciate
CCTV and watching us and getting our bank account details. Okay.
I hope not.
What won't hurt Nikki, she said. Yeah. Bless her.
Well, Dave emailed in to say, I used to get spam calls on a regular basis. I used to feed them rubbish information, false names and numbers, keep them on the phone for a long time, knowing I am wasting their time. In the end, they would get quite ratty with me and cut me off from Dave. Jim, do you think that's a good thing to do if you think you're being scammed, to try and sort of wind the scammer up more?
Well, yes, no. Yes, definitely. If you can afford to spend any time doing what I do, I mean, scam baiting doesn't have to be very technical. And literally, if you can keep a scammer on the phone for as long as humanly possible, they're not scamming someone else. So if you can afford to do that and take the time to waste their time, it's great. You know, they're literally the most expensive part of the scam is employing loads of people to sit in that room. And if they're not making money while they're tied up speaking to someone who's just winding them up like that, has to be a good thing. Although there's one downside, and that is if you even answer the phone to some of these people, they will take some of those details and they will sell those details on to other scam call centers. Uh-huh. And I've done this myself. I've given fake names, and maybe weeks or months later, I will hear the same name repeated back to me. So whoever's got a hold of that information has sold it on. They do sell data. That's part of what the scams are about. So the downside is you might end up getting more phone calls if you engage with them. But like I say, if you're happy to waste people's time, overall it's a good thing to do.
Okay, now we've got some more emails.
Yes. I've got a few questions here from Les. He says, after picking up a landline phone, I hear numbers being rapidly repeated. When speaking to someone in a foreign country, what they have said starts repeating itself. Sometimes the internet connection goes off when the phone is picked up. I've heard clicking sounds on phone and dialing tone changing. How can someone know what you are doing on your home computer? Anything you can do about these things?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. The kind of repeated messages and the little beeps that you hear typically, you will quite often hear a little, there'll be some sort of message on your phone, a robotic message usually, and it will say, if you want to speak to someone, press 1, and you'll hear a little beep. And that beep means that the scammer has only started their phone call. So quite often what happens is the robotic message will never be heard by the person making the call, and they only start speaking to someone when you hear that little beep. That beep means that someone in a call center somewhere has started speaking to you. So that's really what those little noises are about. Now, I didn't really get the second part of that about computer access. Usually the way these scams work, though, is the scammer will want access to your online account. The only way that they can do that is by taking control of your computer. So if you're not all that computer literate and someone's asking you to type something on your computer, that's the point to drop the call.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, if you're not sure what it is they're asking, just say, look, put it in writing to me. Scammers absolutely hate that. They will want to keep you on the phone. They will say that they will put pressure on you to keep you on the phone. But a legitimate company will have no problem whatsoever that if you're not comfortable speaking to them, they should have no problem writing to you. So that's a good way of putting them off. Just say, I'm sorry, I don't want to continue the call. Write me a letter. And that will usually put them off.
What about pop-up messages coming up on your your computer, which is what I think one of these scammers were doing, is sending out these pop-up things, and you need to call this number for tech support, and that's when the scam starts, doesn't it? And they get onto your computer.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, I mean, that's a very common type of computer scam. The one thing that distinguishes something which is fraudulent from a genuine type of virus message or whatever it is no virus message will ever have a phone number on it. If you spot some pop-up in your computer and there's a UK or US or whatever phone number on it, that is guaranteed to be a scam. Because if your computer wants to tell you about a problem, it will just tell you, and it will not have a phone number on it. So if you spot that phone number, 100% it's a scam. And if your computer seems to be stuck or displaying this message and you can't get rid of it, if you're not sure, if you're not technical, the best thing to do, hold your finger on the power button, switch it off, and turn it back on again, and you'll find it's just gone and working as normal. But of course, scammers know that people, if they're not fully technical with computers and all, it's very tempting to call that number. And of course, the person on the end of the phone will be very obliging about trying to help you. But of course, as soon as they get onto your computer, then they will try the real scam, which is to get access to your bank. So again, just hold the power switch. Your computer will turn off after about 5 seconds, turn it on again, and you should be ready to go again.
Yeah. Okay. Next one.
We've got two, sadly, some testimonies of people that have been scammed or family members. Dawn emails in to say, my father was scammed several years ago. He was an elderly man suffering from dementia, living on his own. Yep. They took all his savings from his bank account. So sad situation.
It's awful, yeah.
And Cynthia also has a story to tell us. She says, I would like to warn viewers about a scam I had recently. I had a text from my son, Richard. He said he had lost his phone and was so worried, as now he had lost all his contacts and apps. He then called me mum, as he does, and I was concerned. However, about half an hour later, he sent another text to say that he had to pay this bill by the end of the day, otherwise he would face charges. Could I help? He said it was about £1,800. I remember thinking, my goodness, can I afford to buy it? But you would do anything to help one of your children. Then he said the company wanted information about my bank account, and all of a sudden I realised it wasn't my son, but a scam which was confirmed by him. Since then, I went to Vodafone and they have blocked his caller. They said I may have to change my number. Please warn especially older people like myself, if you get a call from someone you know, you are more likely to fall for this scam. From Cynthia in West Sussex. So we've been talking a lot about phone calls and computers, but these days with mobile phones, WhatsApp and text are a very big way that scammers are getting into people's phones as well, aren't they?
Yeah, one of my own friends had exactly the same happen to her. So what happened was that the password was discovered by a scammer. So they logged into, I think it was Facebook and Facebook Messenger, and she got a message from her brother saying that, look, I need to, lend us some money, and it's exactly the same as you just described there. So I think the thing to take away from that is, if it sounds a little bit off, if it sounds a little bit suspicious, just double check, call the person who sent you that message and just confirm it. And that's the best way to deal with it.
A lot of these scammers, they would use IP phones. And what would you say to our viewers about what to watch out for with regards to the way in which they operate?
Yeah, so IP phones, or Internet Protocol phones, are not real phone lines. They're basically phone calls which operate over the internet. You don't need a physical phone connection to make a phone call. And, well, 100% of scammers will always use those IP phones. And they have an advantage for the scammer in that they can spoof the phone number. So if you happen to have caller display, what you'll see is a phone number which appears there. Anyone can make that number look as if it's any number they feel like. So number spoofing is what's used by scammers quite a lot. In fact, a lot of the phone calls you'll get, the phone number itself may look very similar to like a local phone line. And what they do is they randomize the last 4 digits of your phone number and make that as their caller display, because it's trivially easy to set that caller ID to be whatever you want. In fact, some criminals, some scammers actually spoof that number to look like a local police service or the government number. And I've even had some scammers say, well, look up this HMRC, this tax number, and you'll see that it's exactly the same number that I'm calling from. But of course, that's a well-known trick, and it just, for them, that provides some sort of legitimacy. But when you know that that caller ID is very simple to spoof, you can never trust it. So that's the key thing. Don't worry what's on your caller display. It means nothing.
There are quite a lot I have seen where you get messages or emails sent to you supposedly from HMRC and also other government offices saying, if you, for example, the VAT, if you don't pay your VAT bill within 24 hours, you will be arrested, and they come on quite strong and all of those things. The HMRC and other sort of tax officers and people like that wouldn't be making such statements anyway to you directly, would they? Like that, especially over the phone or computer?
No, they will write to you. That's
exactly.
The thing. HMRC just will not call you. The first thing they will do is write a letter to you, and you can then potentially, if there's a phone number on the literature that they send to you, then engage with them. But if you get a phone call out of the blue, basically it won't be from the real HMRC, and I've seen this quite a lot. I've actually got a video where I've managed to actually see into the inner workings of one of those scam call centers pretending to be HMRC, and that's exactly what they do. They literally make thousands of phone calls saying that you've got some sort of overdue tax or some problem with your tax, and to press 1 to speak to someone. HMRC will never engage with you like that. They will always write to you. So it's just something to bear in mind.
Okay.
Got an email here that says, "Hi guys, I lost my car keys last year and I rang a company who advertised online and would replace them within an hour. I was going along with this until he wanted me to use my credit card and pay over the phone. I smelled a rat and declined the offer. I found my keys 10 minutes later. Thank you, Lord. God bless you, Jim, for what you're doing. Shalom to all." Well, I'm glad you found your keys afterwards.
Now, one of the other things that I remember seeing when I was doing my midnight searching with your YouTubes was the way in which the police in India, because there was quite a few sort of scammers out there in different parts of India, but they seem to be quite prolific as a country doing these, was the police didn't seem to be very interested in bringing them to book. And you had to go to a lot more investigative work in order to sort of find the locations. It's all very well finding an IP address, but how do you find the actual literal address? And some of them, if I remember rightly, were hiding behind a legitimate block of offices, and they were directly behind, but using almost whether it was it a sort of not estate agents, a booking company for holidays and things like that, tourism. And you went to great lengths to expose them, and only then did the police actually do something about it. You had to do their work for them. Why is that the case?
Yeah, I've got to say, first of all, India, yes, it's not just India who make these scam phone calls. There's other countries, but sadly, maybe 90% plus do come from India. And there's various reasons for that. But yes, whenever I do engage with the police, and I mean, the channel isn't just about exposing scams, it's also trying to do something about them. So you're right, I have engaged with the police in India to try and get, particularly the people at the top, really brought to book. And what I've been able to do is get a few of those people arrested. But you're right, there's all sorts of obstacles when I try to really try and get the police to do something. And what the police say they need are victims of the scam, and they have to come forward and make a complaint to exactly the right police authority in India, before that district will do something about them. There isn't like a central place that you can go to say, someone in India has made this phone call and has stolen money, and they will take that in there. I have to go to exactly the right people before action will be taken.
My goodness.
Sometimes the only reason... Sorry, go on.
No, I was just thinking there's no organisation like there is across Europe, like Interpol, where other countries work with other countries in order to catch criminals. It seems that India is quite autonomous, working on its own, and therefore you've got to take your victims all the way over to India before anything can be done. Is that what you're saying?
Well, at least statements from victims. They needed someone to have stolen money. For some reason, it's not good enough for someone to attempt to steal money, even though that's a crime. You know, if I walk into a bank and I say, hand over £1,000 or whatever you have there, but I don't manage to get that money, it's still an attempted bank robbery. It's still a crime. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, when it comes to this sort of crime, attempting to steal money isn't good enough. What I have to do is document exactly who has had money stolen, how much money has been stolen, and get a statement from those people. It's not as if the police would even go to the victim themselves to get that statement. They come to me to get that statement to go to them. So even though what I try to do is highlight scams, an awful lot of my time is spent collecting evidence and doing what I think the police should be doing in the first place. So it is very frustrating. I have had some results from doing that, but it's incredibly, incredibly frustrating because there's hundreds of those scam call centres around.
Well, talking of a majority being in India, Dylan has emailed in to say, I know of huge buildings in Nigeria where they are legally allowing to scam people, and they put adverts in the papers and magazines looking for professional scammers, and they target lonely women and very old people. That's from Dylan. And Jim, in your experience, is it more younger people that are being targeted or falling victim to these scams, or is it the older people? And what is it that's causing them? Is it because there's a lot of like online dating where people can fall scam? There's lots through social media. So what kind of areas are the scammers moving into, and what kind of demographics are they looking for?
So yes, I mean, there's a website called scammer.info, and I had a look at the categories that they use, because obviously the type of scams that I look into tend to be the ones where computers are used, because basically I can find out a lot more information about those sort of scams than other types. So one of the big ones is obviously what you've mentioned there, are romance scams, and they tend to originate in other countries. So countries like Nigeria will typically specialize in that. And for me, it's more difficult to find out who the scammer is. If I only have an email or a message or whatever without a computer connection, it is an awful lot more difficult to find out much about that scammer. So overall, I tend not to look at those sorts of scams, and instead I specialize in the ones involving computers. And like I say, most of those come from India. But yes, romance scams and demographics, it can affect absolutely anyone. The robotic calls are deliberately aimed at the UK daytime because older people tend to be around. But if you can imagine anything which is kind of message based, like emails or messages on online forums, that can affect disproportionately younger people, because basically younger people are never off their phones, so that tends to happen to them. So it depends on the scam.
One which I haven't heard so much of lately, but mind you, probably because I've been out in Spain, but you get people who will call you and say, we're calling about the accident you had. You know, sometimes I have a bit of fun with them. I said, gosh, how did you know? That's amazing. I remember yesterday. Tell me about it. And, you know, this one, it seems to be prolific in use. Is there a reason for that? Where does it lead?
Yeah, honestly, I would love to get to the bottom of some of those. I've had instances of exactly that myself. Someone calls you up saying, yeah, tell me about the accident you've just had. And it always seems to be someone obviously speculating for calls. They're making thousands of the same call. And what they will do is they will sell the data, sell your personal data to ambulance chasers, to solicitors. And the only way, unfortunately, to get to the bottom of, well, why is this happening? Who's making the money?
Yeah.
You'll never find out exactly who makes the phone call, but you might be able to find out which solicitors are making use of that data, which is being sold to them illegally. So I've done this the odd time where I've put in realistic looking details and I've seen where I get the phone call from. And I've confronted some of those solicitors and said, do you realize that this data was given to you as a result of basically robotic calls, illegal calls? And they're usually unaware of that, although I have my doubts whether they're really unaware. But it's very difficult to get to the bottom of those.
Okay.
And we have an email here from Cram and Maggie. They sound quite worried, and the email is a bit here and there, but I'll try and see what we can understand from it. It says, I was watching you a couple of weeks ago when you were showing Jim's work. I have been scared in the past, and now I have someone stealing my disability benefit money. We are both getting worried. God bless, from Cram and Maggie. So if there are some viewers watching tonight that have been scammed, what can they do about it? Are they able to come to you, or should they go to the police? What is the steps to take if money has been taken out of their account or they have been scammed?
Yeah, and I say this on my YouTube channel as well. If the scam has already happened to you, there is nothing I can do whatsoever, because the only way that I can get information on scammers is if I literally witness it myself. Okay, so please don't come to me. I really cannot help you. And I do get thousands of emails, and I mean literally thousands of emails from people who have been scammed in the hope that I can help them. If anybody does kind of lead people to think that they can help and they're not the police or they're not professional private investigators, then they too are scammers. So if someone says, I will definitely help you, and particularly ask for fees up front, that is yet another scam. And unfortunately, scammers do this as well. They take advantage of that.
Wow.
Now, the right place to go is the police, as you can imagine. Action Fraud is there as well, but they are more of a statistics organisation, so I'd encourage you to have a look at Action Fraud, but the police are the people to go to.
Yeah.
Just while you mentioned Action Fraud, it does. I've been on the website and it talks about 5 steps to stop fraud advice. It says, stop, take a moment and stop and think before parting with your money or information could keep you safe. Challenge, could it be fake? It's okay to reject, refuse or ignore any requests. Only criminals will try and rush or panic you. And protect, contact your bank immediately if you think you've fallen for a scam and report it to Action Fraud. So just some advice there from Action Fraud to if you have been scammed or if it seems like it's going to be a scam. And Jim, what kind of some of the telltale signs of scams? We know sometimes, I think Leslie on our mornings the other day was talking about how an email address was slightly different and there was some money, someone was asking for some money and it seemed like it was Leslie's email address, but there was literally just a full stop difference and the person, Gordon, didn't see that difference. So in some things like that might be overlooked. Are there some other telltale signs that you can say, hang on, this is a scam, this isn't quite right?
Yeah, it can be very difficult, and as you say, letters wrong in websites or email addresses, it's very difficult to spot that. And sometimes, because I have a lot of computer background knowledge, I am fairly confident a lot of the time when I can spot when something is a scam and something isn't. If you're not au fait with computers, if you're not that familiar with them, it can be very difficult to distinguish between them. But I think the advice on the Action Fraud site is definitely right. If it's whether it's an email or a phone call, if someone's putting pressure on you to make a decision quickly, that is quite often a giveaway of a scam. The advice is definitely right. You need to take a step back sometimes, particularly when it involves money. Romance scams may be something similar, except that you maybe want to chat it over with a friend, okay? Because there may be things in there that you can't spot. But if you just have that quick discussion with people, if you give yourself the time to kind of go back chat to neighbours, chat to friends about what you're going through or what's been happening. They may be able to help you spot whether it's a scam or not. They might be able to confirm whether it's genuine too. But giving yourself that time at least gives you that opportunity. So that would be the kind of general advice with any of these things. Always give yourself that time. Just sleep on it, and then go ahead and look into it in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
But give yourself that time.
And I think one of the ways in which people would try and get your password, first of all, just never ever give your password over the phone or to anyone. Never ever, because there's that advert, the government advert that's out at the moment. Oh, well, sorry, can I have your password? Just give me the first and the third. Sorry, what was that? The second and fourth, and then you've got the whole lot. So
it's not even passwords actually, Howard. It's these days it's a lot less likely to be something as obvious as a password. What tends to happen these days is most people, particularly the younger people, will have what's called two-factor authentication. So it's not just a password, it's also a PIN to your mobile or a one-time password to your mobile. But what scammers and criminals... Then? So, okay, normally if you typically with your bank, you will have a single password, but something else, a second factor. So usually it's a PIN to your mobile.
Yeah, I got you.
But typically, though, for even websites like Amazon, most people, if you want to reset your password, what you'll do is you'll type in your email address, you've forgotten your password, and you'll get that PIN to your mobile. But fraudsters make use of that, and they will call you up pretending to be Amazon, and they'll say, I'm going to prove that I'm Amazon because I'm going to send you a one-time code to your phone. Can you confirm that for me? And if you read that one-time password or that one-time PIN out to the fraudster, they will take control of your account. And that's probably the single biggest scam which is happening at the moment. So if you get a phone call supposedly from Amazon and Amazon never called you, that undoubtedly is the first step in all of this. The Amazon so-called representative will ask you to read out the PIN they're going to send to you. They're taking control of your account. If you read that PIN out to someone, you have lost control of your account. So never ever read any PIN to anyone on the phone.
Right. Well, that's wow. It's amazing what people will go to. And I was looking, literally, I said to you a few minutes before we went live, Jim, I said, excuse me, Jim, I'm just doing a little bit of research. I was going online, and I just put in there, were there any scammers in the Bible? And you might be surprised to know that one that came up was Jacob, who scammed Esau. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than taking money. He was after his birthright, which was, his inheritance was worth quite a lot of money. But that was interesting because I'd never thought of it before. But also, there's other scriptures like beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. I know that was talking about false shepherds or false pastors and things like that. But there's another one, and do not be deceived. God will not be mocked. Whatever a man or woman sows, so they will reap. But also the two other main sort of like tenets of the Bible are you shall not steal and you mustn't lie. So fraud is stealing and telling somebody that they're Amazon when they're not. That's a lie. But of course, for most of these people who are criminals anyway, they don't give two hoots about what the Bible says. But from a scriptural point of view, these people will be held to account. I'm not going to give a lecture here, Jim, but don't worry. But there is a judgment day coming, and each one will have to give an account for what he or she has done and said, etc. But meanwhile, we do appreciate very much having you on the program, and we've got 10 minutes left. So some more emails as well.
We've got one asking about, have you heard of the Netflix documentary based on a true story called Tinder Swindler? It's called talking about the romance being scammed on online dating sites. What can you tell us about the documentary and what you think of it and how we can avoid them scams online if we're dating online?
I mean, unfortunately, that one I haven't seen myself, but I believe I know how that one works. And obviously, it's like any con artist, so it's all about gaining confidence in someone. So if you want to be a trickster, a fraudster, you first of all have to gain that confidence. So the Tinder swindler, I believe, is someone who just built up that confidence in the victims, and then their intention was always to steal money. And as soon as they basically had the victim convinced that they were genuine, then they made their move. But that can be, whether it's a long-term romance scam or a very short scam like sending a pin to a mobile, then being able to call out, oh, your name and your last Amazon order, because the scammer can see that. That all helps them to be convincing. And again, what you need to do, take a step back, think about what's just happened, and again, give yourself time to think some of these things through.
No, so I think that Tinder swindler thing is something probably about where the guy, for a very suave guy, comes into somebody's life. He obviously looks like he's a multi-millionaire. He's getting off a jet and he's going on holidays, and he has a romance with her one night. And then he sort of says, well, I've got to fly off to so-and-so. And this guy had about 10 romances going on. But he gets to the point where he says, I just need to borrow 100 grand just for 24 hours. Can you just lend that to me? I've just got this terrible bill to, this suddenly come up. And that's how they sort of, persuade people to part with their money, because they think they're in love with this person, or they think they're in love with the lady. And at the same time, he's doing this to several people at the same time, and he ends up with millions. Never does he repay the person who he's borrowed from, and plus he's broken their hearts, no doubt.
I was going to say, it's so sad and heartbreaking that these scammers are playing on people's emotions, whether it's their love or their worry with the cost of living crisis, or they're elderly and they're worried that they're going to lose something, or like the one on the text message, it was their son, and it just seems to be they have no heart. All they think about is the money. Jim, is that what their motivation is as scammers, just to make money?
For sure, yeah. I mean, I've literally come across scammers. And don't forget, I can hear exactly what the scammers say a lot of the time. I can hear what they say to their victims. And sometimes the victims will be open with the scammers about their health problems. And there was one woman who was able to tell the scammer that she was registered blind. And she literally had a year to live. And yet the scammer listened to all of that and still proceeded with the scam. And it's very hard not to be emotional when I hear something like that, because you kind of think, what on earth do you need to do to have any kind of conscience about what you're doing? But for them, it is purely maybe somebody who they think is in the rich Western world, and they can afford to lose some money. I think they've convinced themselves that that's always the case. And of course, and I know that's not the case. And yeah, it's difficult to kind of picture what you have to get into your head before you walk into your job as a scammer. I can never quite get to the bottom of it. And the odd person that I ask directly, and when you confront them, they will be very evasive about why they do what they do. So it's difficult to listen to, for sure.
It is very sad. Well, we've got Kev that's written in to say he was scammed about 5 years ago. I was checking my bank account and 140 from a car insurance went out the day before. I checked my direct debit and they had set up a monthly payment out. I even got papers through the post of the setup. I rang the bank and it was all sorted, but I got the money back and a new account set up. It was troublesome, but it made me more careful. Thanks from Kev. And I think, yeah, that's true, that although obviously it's not a nice thing to go through, at least it kind of opens your eyes to there are these things out there, and to be careful. And we hope that this programme has enlightened our viewers tonight to really be careful and just to not rush into anything, and just be sure of what they're doing, who they're sending money to, not to send money over the phone or anything, but actually phone the bank or your friend, whoever it is that's asking, and just double check the identification. So thank you for that, Kev. Robin says, good evening, guys. Just to say, I was scammed out of £4,000 a few weeks ago. I was stupid to give bank details with a card reader, but PTL Nationwide gave it all back to me. I heard just today a friend lost £3,000 in her bank account by someone came into a home to do a repair and they got access to the computer. She wasn't even aware of it at the time until later when she realised money had been taken from her account. Thank you, so helpful, from Robin. Jim, do you hear much of that? People actually going into the homes of the victims and getting on their computers?
Yeah, that's much rarer. Well, in my view anyway, of course, I don't see those things typically. Normally what I see is scammers' computers. So yes, I'm sure that happens. For me, though, that's a very rare occurrence. I have never heard of that before, but yeah, I feel really sorry for her.
I've just got one question that came to mind. I happened to, sadly, spent a long time waiting for some flights, international flights. And I was in America, Tampa at the time, a few years ago. And I was in that airport probably, 12 hours or something like that. And I was watching one particular gentleman, which, I don't know, he just didn't seem to sit right with the rest of us. And I wondered if he was able to gain access to our mobile phones, if you've got that sort of, if your phone is sadly set to be open to somebody phishing. Is there anything in that people need to be aware of, that some people have the potential of actually getting into your phone if they're sitting near you?
Yes and no. There's a typical advice where if you use something called free Wi-Fi, so airports typically have that. Yeah. And the disadvantage with free Wi-Fi is that in theory, anybody around you can look at the traffic going over that free Wi-Fi. Now, there's still limits to what you can do, but the advice, and sorry to get slightly technical, that if you use free Wi-Fi, the first thing you should do is switch on something called a VPN. And if you're not familiar with that term, just Google it, and that will keep you safe. But in general, I think there's a little bit of myth around that. But if you're using free Wi-Fi, be a little bit careful, switch on VPN, and you should be fine.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good advice, because the thing is that people are open to trying to take advantage of people who are waiting around a long time, and they're on their computers and they're in near vicinity. So I appreciate that.
I know we're running out of time, but I really want to read this email because I like it. Maggie says, "Hi guys, good show, much needed. Some years ago, I answered the phone and it was immediately obvious it was a scammer. I took the opportunity to remind him that one day he would be standing before God, giving him account of his life. He got very sheepish and he said sorry before he put the phone down. This is a golden opportunity to evangelize." Bless you, from Maggie. I like that. So yeah, if you want to waste their time, you might as well tell them about Jesus.
Okay, and tell them they'll stand in Judgment Day one day, and their scamming will come to an end. Jim, literally in the last 30 seconds, what would you like to say to us, and apart from us saying thank you, big thank you to you for being with us today?
Oh no, the thank you is from me really, because like I say, I find it very difficult reaching a lot of people. I mean, YouTube is a very niche audience, if you like, so I just appreciate the opportunity, I guess, to talk about scams. And like I say, some of the advice, some of the things that I've said in this, I would say don't be too scared of it, because ultimately the computer is there as a tool and it can be a really useful item. So the only thing I would say out of all of this is don't be too scared of all of this. Don't be afraid of technology, because ultimately it's for the good overall. But yeah, I think
we're running out of time now. I don't want to scam you.
Just give yourself time. Sure. Okay.
But we've got about 30
thank
seconds.
you again for being on the show.
Jim, absolutely brilliant. And you're welcome back anytime if you've got something you want to share with us. And Nikki as well, thank you very much indeed for preparing everything, doing the research, and for Carl for doing the advert as well, and a little bit of reporting. Brilliant. And also to our wonderful crew who are sitting in the back there, all two of them can bring to you important information for such a time as this. Good night. Thank you for it.